So, try your best American accent was one of the first things Ethan, one of my peers asked me. Great. We were day two, standing at Dallas International DC, ready to fly out to our first country, Guatemala. I started thinking about how I didn't feel like an insider because I was so new to this environment. I spoke Dutch, I lived in Belgium, and had not one single connection to this group full of Americans. It was a risk coming in as the only international. My entire life, people have told me not to take risks, to not challenge, to not explore, to just follow the path that everyone is walking on. But I was stubborn and I did it anyway. Making that decision doesn't mean that I wasn't afraid. I feared that I would never fit in. I wanted to take that plane back to Belgium because this was my last opportunity to do so. Of course, I did not. I stayed, although it was a struggle in the beginning. I constantly needed to translate from English to Dutch in my head. I was exhausted, but also wanted to get to know others. I had a break during conversations about American colleges, food, and brands. But at the same time, I couldn't contribute, and I was wondering to what extent they were interested in my perspective. During my river of life, when we needed to tell our life stories, I cried about my sister's health. I was shocked and surprised because that never happened before. I felt vulnerable and exposed. It was a risk telling all these strangers my deepest secrets. There were no limits anymore. There was nothing to hide. And that was the exact moment I realized that this was going to be a lifetime experience. Putting yourself out there with people from foreign cultures was also a risk. You risk offending them, confusing them, or even worse, getting laughed at. I needed to find a way to communicate with all these people without speaking the language. I needed to adjust on the new living conditions and the food. Sooner than I expected, the risks started to pay themselves off. It rewarded me by belonging to a group, by building up great relationships without even speaking the language, just trying, and even understanding the power of using body language. I started thinking, journaling, and even dreaming in English. The lack of my technology started to made me immerse me into my language skills. I one time called with my dad in Dutch. We were talking about the latrines we needed to use. A lot of struggles for us as a group. While explaining this, I wanted to say running water, but I accidentally said flowing water. It's a very stupid mistake because it's a literal translation from English to Dutch. Well, my native language is just Dutch. It was just clear to me that Dutch started to be in the background of my head and English in the foreground. I started to get use of all the new things. I learned how to cope with things that were new and different to me. And I grew a lot socially. My peers and TBB have helped me a lot with that. There was one seminar that stuck out to me. Evan, one of my program leaders, told a story about a murder that involved a few people. We needed to rank every person from the most offensive, guilty, to the most innocent, according to our own values. We needed to come together to come to a mutual conclusion. There was a whole scene because no one had the same thought process, not even close. It was such a short story that brought up so much of a discussion. I approached it from a very psychological way, others from relationships they had, and others followed their instinct. My interest in psychology had sparked. Conversations about social constructs, the power of manifesting, the fear of taking risks started to be a daily routine, a daily activity. I embraced the fact that everyone has a different opinion. Both nature and nurture are the factors that are deciding what our day-to-day decisions are. And they are the ones that are the factors to decide what our values are as an individual and as a group. Another seminar was about how to define our core values. There was a list of all these values, and we kept narrowing them down until we only had 2 left. Mine were independence and curiosity. I want to stand on my own, being able to make my own decisions, being a strong, independent woman. I want to be curious, to not take things for granted. The values from others were authenticity, self-actualization, community, etc. The fact that the group was so diverse made everyone prioritize something else. And I learned that you are never done learning, that you always should keep asking questions, because there's so much to discover about everyone. I learned that being an outsider is just an illusion that everyone has. We all came on this program as different individuals with different backgrounds, but we all had one mutual purpose, and that was to learn. We maybe all had like different personal goals, but you also always came back to the fact that we wanted to learn and improve ourselves. My conclusion of all of this is that you should be encouraged to take risks. While writing this, it feels stupid to say that, because you probably know all of this. You understand it. It's not groundbreaking, but it's true, and I experienced it. So put yourself out there, be vulnerable, be uncomfortable, be curious. Get out of your comfort zone and start exploring, because the risks that you will take will start to pay themselves off. You will gain a better understanding of yourself, people around you, and the world. Take the risk or lose a chance. Last but not least, I want to attempt to speak with my best American accent for you all. Like, what can I say? If you don't do well things while you're young, you will have nothing to smile about while you're old. Like, well, mood. And to add some beans to our dip with some shredded cheese. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Melanie. I laughed out loud and realized I was muted when you were talking about speaking in your best American accent. So thank you so much. I'm curious if anyone has any questions for Melanie. You can go ahead and drop it in the chat box. And if not, we will move on to our next student.
Please feel free to ask something if you want to.
Yeah, you can apply. Feel free.
Woo!
Yay! Good job, Melanie.
Love the American accent.
Okay. How do you think this will change your approach to university studies?
Well, I think I am planning on going to study in the Netherlands, and I will study law. And I think that I will not just take things that, like the laws that are there, I will try to find a reason behind it and why we as a community are having all these laws, and just how are we able to judge someone. So I think it's very interesting to see how crime and everything is so relative to every country. And I think that's very interesting.